Louisa Elizabeth Eliza Brown was born on October 30th, 1852 in Greenup County, Kentucky. She was born to Joseph A. Brown and Susan Prater. She was the oldest child of the 11 Joseph would have with Susan. She would marry William Henry Cremeans on July 31st, 1871 in Greenup County, Kentucky. Their first child was born on June 15, 1872 in Greenup County. He would be called William Henry after his father. Joseph would be born on December 25, 1874 in Greenup County, Kentucky. Alfred Marshall would come on February 5, 1877 in Greenup County. Louisa's mother, Susan, passed away in 1878 in Greenup County. Basil Anderson will be born on February 21, 1881 in Greenup County. He died in 1900 or 1905 in Oklahoma. It is unknown how he died. No articles or death notice have been found at this time. He left no wife or children. He was only 19 years old. Faithy Ellen would come on February 4, 1884 in Greenup County. Flora Agnes was born on April 30, 1887 in Greenup County. Laura May would be born in Texas on February 25, 1889. Della Florence would be born in Maud Pottawatomie, Oklahoma on January 27, 1892. The family would move to Hartshorn, Indian Territory, now Pittsburgh County, in 1895. William Sr., Basil, Joseph, and Marshall worked in the coal mines in that area. Records show that Joseph and Marshall worked for the Haley-Ola Coal Company out of Haleyville in the 19-teens. So it is possible that their father and other brothers also worked for this company. The 1900 U.S. federal census shows that William and Louisa had 13 children, with only 8 still alive in 1900. It is not known when the other 5 were born, what gender they were, or how long they lived. With the 1890 census mostly gone, and 10 years between each census, the short lives of these children are lost to us. Family rumor says that there were 1 to 2 sets of twins. The family lived in the Hartshorn area only 8 years when William Sr. was killed. He had gone back to Greenup to visit family and old friends. He was at a picnic on Little White Oak Creek when he was shot and killed by a man that had a grudge against him. Louisa would marry John Crowder on September 19, 1904 in Hartshorn. The Hartshorn Sun, Thursday, September 23, 1904. A happy wedding. John Crowder and Mrs. Louisa Cremeans were united in the bond of matrimony Sunday morning at 9 o'clock at the home of Reverend J.C. Matthews, the Reverend Matthews officiating. Uncle John is now 73 years old and has lived in Hartshorn for a number of years, and is well and favorably known. The bride has also been a resident of Hartshorn for a number of years, and is noted in the south part of the city, where she has resided for her kind, charitable, and loving disposition. She was 53 years old on her last birthday. May the newly wedded couple spend the balance of their sojourn in union of peace and happiness. Louisa's father, Joseph, passed away May 1, 1908 in Greenup County. Louisa's second husband, John, passed away in 1908 or 1910. The only documentation about John's death is his headstone and later her obituary. These show him as passing away on 15th November 1908. However, he shows up as still alive in the 1910 U.S. federal census. So it is very possible that his death date could in reality be November 15th, 1910. With both husbands gone and her children all grown, she made a living for herself as a washerwoman in 1920. She owned her own home in Haleyville free and clear. In 1930, she was living in Haleyville with her last surviving son, Alfred Marshall. She was in her late 70s. In 1932, her family would honor her with an 80th birthday party. The McAllister News Capital, Thursday, November 3rd, 1932. Mrs. Cremeans is honored at dinner on her birthday. Haleyville. Honoring Mrs. Louisa Cremeans on her 80th birthday, Sunday, October 30th, a dinner was given in the home of her daughter, Mrs. L. M. Day. Mrs. Cremeans came to Haleyville when she was 18 years old from Kentucky with her husband, Will Cremeans. She has spent the whole of her life in Hartshorn and Haleyville. Guests at the dinner were intimate relatives, Mrs. L. M. Day and daughter Georgia, Mrs. John Oniski and sons Junior and Eddie Jean, Marshall Cremeans, Mr. and Mrs. Roy Evans and daughter Jacqueline of Hartshorn, and Ms. Darlene Victor of Haleyville. The appointments for the dinner were beautiful and many lovely gifts were received. I had the chance to talk with Louisa's granddaughter Darlene about Louisa. She recalled her grandmother loved to sit on her front porch in her rocking chair. Darlene also recalled that Louisa always had pancakes sitting on the back of her stove for visitors to snack on. Darlene has since passed away, and I am thankful that I got to record this part of Louisa's story. On October 15, 1933, she fell at home and broke her hip. She would be treated at St. Mary's Hospital in McAllister, Oklahoma. She would go to her award on February 26, 1940 in Haleyville. She is buried by her 4 sons and at least 3 of her grandchildren in Elmwood Cemetery in Hartshorn. The Hartshorn Sun, Thursday, February 29, 1940. Funeral is Wednesday for Pioneer Mother. Funeral services for Mrs. Louisa Cremeans Crowder, who died Monday, February 26 at 6 a.m., were held Wednesday at 3 o'clock at the First Christian Church in Haleyville, with Reverend T. P. Spear, pastor, officiating. Burial was in Elmwood Cemetery with Carl Freeman, Blondie Drummonds, Andrew Oniski, Carl Coletti, Walter Gorham, and Albert Long acting as pallbearers. Louisa Brown was born October 30th, 1852 in Greenup County, Kentucky. She married Will Cremeans in Kentucky and moved to Oklahoma in 1895. He died in 1903, and she married John Crowder in 1904. He died in 1908. He was a Civil War veteran and an Oddfellow. 5 of her 8 children are living. They are Marshall Cremeans, Mrs. Faithy Painter, Mrs. Flora Kirby, and Mrs. Laura Dinwiddie of Haleyville, and Mrs. Della Day of Hartshorn. 25 grandchildren and 30 great-grandchildren survive.